Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Sorry it's been a little bit of a wait for my new video, but life has got in the way, but we're back with a bang. Beautiful weather outside, and we're going to be making the most of a very seasonal and amazing ingredient that you've seen me forage before, which is wild garlic today. We obviously did a nice wild garlic recipe with some chicken. If you haven't seen it, it's an earlier video on my channel that we'll link below. However, today I think is probably the most popular way of using wild garlic, which is making a lovely pesto from scratch. Obviously pesto is a great product to make. It's very versatile, obviously great with pasta. So today we're going to be doing a wild garlic pesto that we're going to then serve with some nice rigatoni pasta. But yeah, so in terms of the ingredients that we're going to be using, it's really straightforward. Now, pesto often is made with pine nuts. Pine nuts are A, very expensive, and also B, I don't actually think they're really all that great. So we're going to be using hazelnuts today, which I believe the first time I saw a hazelnut pesto recipe was through 𝑭𝒊𝒏𝒅. 𝑭𝒊𝒏𝒅 is an organic farm. If you're not UK based, you might not be familiar, but it's an organic farm based in Devon. We love them. We order veg from them all the time. They're like a subscription based vegetable box ordering service. So we're going to be making the pesto with hazelnuts today, and we're going to toast those. Another obviously key ingredient for a pesto is parmesan. This is a nice organic one from, you guessed it, 𝑭𝒊𝒏𝒅. We've also got a couple of products from brands that I did want to talk about that are in no way sponsors, but brands that we've kind of fallen in love with and kind of probably don't talk enough about. So one is also a brand that we discovered at 𝑭𝒊𝒏𝒅. Now I'm going to try and pronounce it. It's actually a British brand, but it's got an Italian name. 𝑃ESTO. But the interesting thing is it's organic spelt pasta, stone ground whole grain, so whole grain wheat, and they're a British-based brand. So as you know, if you've watched my other videos, I like to champion homegrown brands. So this is one we're going to be using, but it's a lovely pasta. And the thing that we found with whole grain pasta is you don't often feel bloated or that sort of fatigue, that tiredness after eating it. And we also have a really nice olive oil, and this is a brand that Josie's talked about a lot on her channel called Citizens of Soil. And essentially, they're also a subscription-based model. We're part of their olive oil club, I think. This one's from Spain, but the really nice thing is if you subscribe, you get different deliveries of olive oil every month, I believe it is, from all over the world, not just Greece, not just Italy. As I say, this is from Spain. But the other nice thing is they really are very much into regenerative farming, so supporting regenerative farmers. And I believe the olive oil comes direct from the farmer to them, to you, the consumer. There's not too many middlemen, not too many people trying to take their cut. And they look at really trying to support the farmers who are producing this amazing product. So yeah, we're going to obviously need a fair bit of olive oil. You might hear that we've got water boiling on the hob. Obviously we've harvested the wild garlic. You saw me do that earlier. We've got a little bit growing at home now, which is awesome. If you are interested in growing wild garlic at home, by the way, we already had a little bit growing here. And interestingly, we discovered recently that you can actually order wild garlic bulbs online. We've actually just ordered some from Etsy. They haven't arrived yet, but I'm intrigued to know what that ends up being like. But ultimately, we have a small supply outside, and it does spread every year, so we're patiently waiting. But we've obviously harvested that today. Otherwise, you might be able to get it from a local farm shop, or as you saw on hopefully my other video, there will definitely be some in your local woods. You just need to search for it, and it's quite a fun adventure. So we're going to be using a lot of that today as well. The other important thing when making pesto is just to try it as you go along. It's like many dishes in the kitchen. I cook it kind of with feel, so I'm going to use whatever ingredients I think in the quantity that it feels like we need. It's quite hard to tell you an exact quantity of each. And to be honest, whenever I make pesto, it's always nice to have a good amount left over, and you put it in a nice jar and it stores for at least a couple of weeks. One ingredient that I've forgotten to put on the board that we are going to need is some lemon as well for that sort of acidity. So I'm going to get a lemon from the fridge. But other than that, it's very straightforward. And I do think that pesto making, even the most basic of cooks can do. And it's quite a nice thing to do for friends if you want to give them a gift at this time of year, making the most of this beautiful seasonal herb. Herb? Wild garlic a herb? Vegetable, maybe. So anyway, yeah, without further ado, we're going to get cracking and get cooking. Now, in terms of utensils, we're actually going to be using our Thermomix today because that is the most straightforward way of doing this, but you don't need a Thermomix. If you've got a food processor, you can use any normal food processor. If you don't have a food processor, it does take a bit longer and a bit more muscle, but you can do this with a pestle and mortar. In the interest of time, we're going to use our Thermomix, but as I say, don't overthink it. If you've got a pestle and mortar, you can do this, or ideally a food processor. First important thing with wild garlic, obviously, if you've gone and picked this from outside, like with any vegetable, is to give it a good rinse. I've given the wild garlic a good rinse. Now, one thing I had to Google because I wasn't quite sure is whether you can, I know you can eat the flowers, but these are the unopened flowers. And online, it wasn't particularly conclusive. You can eat them, but I think they're probably quite bitter. So I think they're good for pickling is what it said online. So we're gonna take those out and keep those to one side, and I might investigate on how best to use those because you don't want to waste them. But that is the one thing with wild garlic. It's in season from March, depending on the weather patterns, but at the moment, it's very much in season from March through to June. But as it develops, it does get more bitter and more garlicky as it grows. As I say, it will flower in the next couple of weeks, and it's really quite pretty. So wild garlic generally tends to be better to harvest at the earlier part of the season, I would suggest. So we're gonna separate those out, and if we have got any of those, I will take those out and keep them separate. Get those into a bowl. I should have mentioned earlier, but I assume a lot of people know this already, but a pesto normally, or more commonly, is with basil. But the nice thing about wild garlic is it gives you that sort of, it gives you a lot more flavour, I would say, than basil. Often with a basil pesto, you would add garlic, but you don't need to with this because obviously you've got the wild version. So we're gonna get all those leaves in there. Obviously the stalks can go in as well. Very little wastage with this, which is nice. So separate that out. And then we're gonna get it into the Thermomix. So we're gonna get this into the Thermomix and we're gonna get blitzing. Now at this point, I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil in. If you add in a little bit now, it just keeps things moving in there. It can get all a bit stuck together. We're gonna get the hazelnuts toasting now as well. So grab your hazelnuts, get a nice little roasting tin like this. I'm gonna go for a good amount here. As I say, just go with what you think feels like the right amount. I mean, that's how much we're doing for this and this pesto. I don't know how much we're gonna end up with, if I'm honest, and I quite like that. Whatever we end up with that's excess, we'll put in a jar and save. So we're gonna get them toasting. I think realistically about 4 or 5 minutes, but make sure you set a timer. I always like to set a timer a bit shorter than what the time is. Have a look at them, and then we'll set a timer for the remaining minutes. Go into the agar. Now is also a good time to get your pasta on, so make sure you get some nice salted pasta water and get that on the boil. So we're about to grate some Parmesan now. Once again, I would just do as much or as little as you like the taste of. It's gonna add obviously some nice fat to the dish. It's gonna add some really salty flavor to the wild garlic pesto. A few little tips that I've picked up on some of the cookery classes that I've done in the past. Tip number 1 is get a lovely wooden chopping board. Now this is A, much better for your knife than a plastic board. B, better for your health, because when you're chopping on a plastic board, you can end up with microplastics in your dish. And number 3, it's actually better with the bacteria because you can scrub this down and disinfect it afterwards, rather than with the plastic. Bacteria can sit in the little gaps where you've chopped and it's harder to clean. And then the other tip, because it's wood and wood does move, is to use, this video should be sponsored by 𝑾𝒉𝒂𝒕 really, they're not currently a sponsor, is to use the lid, I don't know what you'd call these, the lid seals. If you get 2 of these and put them under your chopping board, it grips and it stops the chopping board moving around, which is much safer when you're chopping. With wooden chopping boards, what can happen is they can get a bit wet, they can bow a bit, they move around. And if you've got a board that's moving around while you're chopping, that's not good for anyone. And then another safety tip that I've learned, because I am quite clumsy in the kitchen, is a gauze glove. I think we showed this on one of the recipes before. I'll link it down below. And basically it means when you're using a microplane, which is much better for grating things like Parmesan or zesting, it's quite sharp. It means you're not gonna hurt the ends of your fingers, and it means you can make the most of every last bit of this Parmesan or whatever you're grating. So yeah, just a few little gadgets that are fairly inexpensive, that are gonna be safer for you, better for your health, and actually make the whole process a lot easier. So we're just gonna grate the Parmesan. Good thing about using a microplane versus your average cheese grater is when you grate it, it's just a lot fluffier. And I do think that genuinely does help while you're cooking. Now, I always like to save the rind. I'll put that in some Tupperware, and when we're making a big, deep, rich cheese sauce or something, you can put the rind in with the cheese sauce and blend it up to make the most of it. It's not going to be any use today, but it will become of use next time we do a pasta dish. Put that to one side. Then we're going to add the Parmesan into the Thermomix or into your food processor. Then we're going to do a nice big glug of olive oil, and we're going to blend it up again. Okay, time to get the pasta on. A good amount here. So at this point, we've got the toasted hazelnuts out. What you want to kind of see is them opening up, cracking open a little bit, and that toasted flavour is going to add a lot of depth to this. Then you get a spatula, get everything down the edges like this, making sure you make the most of every last bit of wild garlic. We are now going to add the hazelnuts in. Now we're going to add a nice squeeze of lemon juice. Best thing with this is give a squeeze of 1/2 of a lemon and then taste it, and then you can always add a little bit more. But if you add too much, then we're in trouble. Okay, another little bit more olive oil. You can never have too much olive oil in your life. And then we're going to stick this on. This should be the last blitz of the day. That's good. You need some salt and pepper. Give it a good season. Tiny bit more olive oil. And that. Into the pan. Okay, we've added the wild garlic pesto into the dish with the pasta, and then a little glug of olive oil, and then we're going to stick some pepper in here as well for a bit more seasoning to taste. And then I think the important thing is to give it a quick try before we plate it up. Perfect. Very garlicky. That's what we want. This is definitely not one to have on a date or to cook on a date. So yeah, make sure you're with friends and family when you eat this. But yeah, delicious. I think you can always have a little bit more lemon juice in there for a bit of zestiness. And then you can never really have too much Parmesan, but we'll actually use the Parmesan when we serve it. You could also, to elevate this dish, you could add some spinach into the pesto if you wanted to add a little bit more health into it and a little bit more protein and vitamins. But using hazelnuts, don't quote me on this because I'm certainly not a nutritionist, but hazelnuts definitely have more nutritional value than pine nuts. So I think that's already going to add a little bit more protein and a bit more omegas in there. But ultimately this is a comfort dish, and it's a spring comfort dish. So let's get it served up and let's get it outside. So there you have it, wild garlic pesto pasta. Really easy dish, really straightforward. You don't need many ingredients. And whilst it's a comfort dish, I don't think it's crazy unhealthy, and it's something that is perfect after a long day in the garden or good fuel for gardening. We'll also have, as I predicted, a fair bit left over. So we're gonna get 𝑭𝒊𝒏𝒅 again. Once again, not a sponsor, but if they wanna sponsor me, more than welcome. And we're just gonna fill that up with what's left. Now, this needs to store in a fridge, and you just really need to probably use it within 2 weeks. But the one thing I would say is it tends to sort of get a little bit solid in the fridge. So when you do come to use it, you're gonna wanna add a bit more olive oil in to loosen it up. So there you have it, a very straightforward dish, very much a comfort dish. And yeah, I think one for anyone to give a go. The important thing here is just to taste things as you go and season it to taste. Everything needs to fit what your requirements are. Thank you very much for watching. We have lots more exciting dishes planned for in the kitchen, and I'm gonna try and be a bit more consistent with my videos now with one a week. Would love to hear from you guys what you'd like to see. Obviously, I'm very much a cook, not a chef, so I'm learning in the kitchen as well. And we also have some exciting videos planned for outside, maybe even a nice old house tour of all the sort of historic period features that we maybe take for granted in this house. But yeah, feel free to comment below what you'd like to see, and I will see you in the next video.